All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is David Jackson. I'm from the Snohomish Conservation District. Today, I'm going to talk about a project that we enacted through 2020 and parts of 2021 called the Regional Stormwater Action Team, and some specific lessons that we learned from that about conservation districts interacting with local municipalities and regional stormwater planning. I want to start by thanking our partners on this project, the Washington State Conservation Commission, the Puget Sound Conservation Districts. This was funded through the Conservation Commission as part of a pass-through fund from Department of Ecology and EPA. And of course, I always want to thank our implementation partners, the Veteran Conservation Corps from Washington Department of Veterans Affairs. So I will introduce myself first. These are two pre-COVID pictures. This is an example that you can take somebody out of the field, but you can't take the field out of them. My name is David. I'm the program manager for the community conservation team. I work at the Snohomish for the Snohomish Conservation District. We focus on urban, suburban, and exurban installations, primarily on water quality and urban agriculture. You'll see a picture of me on the left doing an installation near Parr Creek, and on the right, I am hosting an informational session on GSI. It's wonderful to meet you. Like I said, the community conservation team does a number of things, including green infrastructure, urban agriculture, residential habitat, and fire-safe communities. Today, we are going to focus on the green infrastructure portion, which is one of our major focuses and also was the focus of this project. Before we get into that, I did want to spend just a little bit of time showing off some of the fun stuff that we do. This is a project that we did in Snohomish County. On the upper left there, that's St. Anne's. We did, yes, St. Anne's. That's a project that we did on the Tulalip Reservation, Discovery Elementary, some water catchment in the top right. And then St. Mary's is a terrace rain garden down there in the bottom left. We do a lot of GSI. Water is one of our primary concerns. So a quick refresher for anybody who doesn't know the idea of stormwater and runoff. Water falls from the sky, it hits impervious surfaces, things like roofs, driveways, roads, parking lots, in some cases lawns. It gathers pollutants and then it goes into the stormwater system, which often then discharges to local water bodies. Those water, it then floods those water bodies with increased water as well as higher levels of pollutants. Pollutants can be heavy metals, toxins, nutrients, organics, things like that. This is one of my little favorite diagrams to sort of quickly talk about the problems of runoff. On the right there, you have sort of the natural model where the majority is either infiltrates into soil or evapotranspirates up back into the air with only a small amount of runoff. And then on the left, you have a high amount of runoff with less evapotranspiration and even less infiltration. So GSI, Green Stormwater Infrastructure, is meant to follow the more natural model. It consists of things like rain gardens and bioswales, which could be public or private. All depends on who your partners are. And the idea is to get water to stay in place and soak into the ground. You see on the left there, that is a rain garden in action. I like showing that photo because I think that a lot of photos of rain gardens show them completely dry. And in this case, rain gardens do hold water. That's why they have the ponding depth and are shaped the way that they do. So that water will stay there instead of running off into the storm system, and it will infiltrate over the next 24 to 48 hours back into the aquifer. So the Regional Stormwater Grant, Regional Stormwater Action Team, or what we in the team sometimes called RSAT, was a grant from the Commission and DOE, passed through funds from the EPA. It was focused on working with other CDs, who we called our partner CDs, and providing stormwater technical assistance. The byword of this was to increase capacity. We wanted to have other CDs and ourselves increase their capacity to carry out GSI projects. The three major elements, as far as our outward facing efforts went, were partner coordination and increased capacity, education and outreach, and GSI design and implementation. We'll be talking about each of these in greater depth. Partner coordination, again, that byword, increasing capacity, was part of getting everybody who wanted to do this work together, everybody who wanted to be a part of this, coordinating how we were going to help each other and how we could work as a big unit. We did a lot of this through outreach, helped them with their outreach effort, helped them customize their outreach effort. We told them what worked for us, not necessarily going to work for them, how they could take what did work for them. We did a little bit of design work, and we talked them through the implementation process. Here's one of our veterans, again, earlier on in 2000, this is pre-COVID, before masks. He's working at the Port of Anacortes in the cluster of rain gardens that they have there. We were very happy to work with the Port of Anacortes on their rain gardens. These are not only, so that awesome watering can that you see in the background there, that's taking water in from the roof. I really love that downspout. And you'll also notice off to the left there behind Jay, there's a curb cut right next to where the rocks are. So this is taking water not only from the roof, but also from the parking lot. It's part of what makes these gardens so great is that they're taking water from two sources. Water from parking lots is almost always more polluted. So we like any projects that can help with that. So a little bit about the kind of rain gardens in GSI that we were helping implement. There are three main categories: residential, commercial, and ponds. Residential gardens are usually done in clusters, usually around 6 per cluster. We call them clusters because we want to keep them near each other to work on an economy of scale. The closer they are, we can do things in phases. We can do things faster, and we can do things for less money and less expenditure. These are always built on private residences. It's another reason we like doing them in clusters, is because we can get neighbors on board with each other, and we can actually kind of use neighbors to help us with outreach. We'll often find what we call a neighborhood champion. That's somebody who's really gung-ho, and they'll go around and bug their neighbors until everybody gets on board. It also helps us with outreach because we can organize walking tours. We can send people down a few different streets, have them walk around and see several different rain gardens, because all the rain gardens that are built on private residences are a little bit different. Here's an example of a cluster before it's been planted. Again, we have that distinctive GSI rain garden shape with the ponding depth in the middle, rocks around the inflow and the outflow. You'll notice that they're all in the front yard. And if you look closely, you'll notice that all of them are also taking water primarily from the roof. There's a little bit of infiltration or interception, water coming off of the lawns in some case, but for the most part, they're all coming from the roof. This is not the final form for the rain gardens. They are planted, but the way that we install them, we always plant a few months after construction in the winter. Or not in the winter, but in the fall. We do that because it's wetter and increases the plant's chance of survival. Moving on to commercial gardens, these are always done one at a time, almost always done one at a time. I shouldn't say always, they're almost always done one at a time. That is because they are significantly larger and sometimes they're more labor intensive. I note that they may be a D-pave there. D-pave is a large rain garden when you actually remove pavement. These are usually done in parking lots. Those are the most common, but they're also occasionally done on roadsides. Very rarely are they done in private residences to take up driveway, but you remove impervious surface and you put GSI in its place. So you kind of get a twofer. Not only are you reducing the impervious surface and the pollutant generating surface, but you're also adding some rainwater control. And these are almost always built on public or commercial plots. And we do that in part because just like we do the larger gardens in the deep paves, we want to take that polluted water from the parking lot, but we also want to raise the profile of these. We want them to be very, very visible to the public. So here's an example of a commercial garden that we did in elementary school. Schools and churches are two of our most common participants in these sort of projects. which is great because again, they're highly visible. They have a lot of people that are walking by them. Jefferson Elementary, you can see on the far left there, what it looked like beforehand. Excavation in the middle left. The backfilling of the specialized rain garden soil, the 60-40 mix of compost and sand there in the middle right. Now on the far right, that same distinctive GSI rain garden shape. Again, the plants have not yet been planted. All of these since have been planted, but I do not have the photos available. Moving on to stormwater ponds. So we didn't do any retrofits or building on stormwater ponds, but what we did do was a series of technical assistance classes, site visits, and different types of follow-up. Stormwater ponds are very commonly not maintained well, and when they're private, in several cases, they are the HOA or the private owners don't know how to maintain them appropriately. Not their fault. Proper maintenance is not necessarily something that is extremely apparent, and they sometimes don't have the best records. So in order to try to get more people into compliance, several different municipalities will reach out to us and ask us for help. Doing some outreach to those folks who are not in compliance and getting them the technical assistance they need to come into compliance. So this is an example of such a detention pond that we did some technical assistance with. This is not one of the regional ones that we did. This is one that is located in Snohomish County. This one is largely special because it's the first site visit that I got to do when the initial COVID lockdowns restrictions were lifted, and I was allowed to go back out and do site visits. Wasn't around anybody, I was masked up, but I was very excited to be outside again. This is a pond that we ended up going back and talking and making some recommendations to the HOA and the city as to how they could reduce their maintenance load and how they could follow up to make that detention pond more productive and effective. So moving on to outreach and education, this was taking on three different styles. Originally, we had train the trainers, which we were going to work directly with our partner CDs around Puget Sound and work with them on what their protocols were. Then there was going to be large outreach to potential cooperators in each of those conservation districts. And then there would be these big broader impacts. Well, almost none of those happened because COVID knocked us out pretty quick, what we were able and not able to do. So we adapted our events. We did socially distanced planting events, which normally we would do these big planting parties, and instead we just had our crew go out and do that while everybody else was staying away, so the plants would still get in the ground, but it wasn't as great of an outreach event or outreach opportunity as it usually is. And then of course everything transitioned to webinars. That's what you're watching right now. Again, the byword of all of these was increasing capacity. We wanted to not just do things for our partner CDs, but really kind of show them what worked and help them figure out, or what worked for us and help them figure out what would work for them. So this is a pre-COVID planting event. This is what we used to do, and hopefully we'll be able to get back to someday. The idea is that we would go out, we would place all of these plants, we work with the master gardeners, and then we would get a number of volunteers, including the homeowners, who would come out and have just a really great time getting these things planted, putting them in the ground. You get a chance to interface with a lot of people. Everyone gets a chance to have their hands dirty, and they learn. You get to educate them about rain gardens. Get a lot of people excited. We obviously can't do those anymore. We can't pack 6 people into a rain garden near each other planting anymore. Hopefully again someday. This is what our rain barrel event post-COVID looks like. You can't quite tell through Forrest's perspective, but myself back there in the gray hoodie and Kari, who's one of our events coordinators, we are in fact 6 feet apart. And all of the rain barrels that you see stacked up there have been pre-ordered. The only reason all people do in this case is they drive up, we put the rain barrels in the back of the car, and we say, thanks very much. We use that as an opportunity to hand them off some literature so they're still familiar with what we're doing in the GSI, but we aren't interacting with them face to face nearly as much. Kind of a bummer, but it's what we can do, and we got to do whatever we can. So I can't go any further without talking about the Veteran Conservation Corps. What a wonderful organization they are. They do all of our GSI installation, all of our maintenance, and they're also an amazing tool for outreach. I say tool, they're amazing partners for outreach. They are, if you're not familiar with the Veteran Conservation Corps, it's a group of former and transitioning veterans who are essentially looking for a level of job training and internship in some sort of conservation. We have one of the only crews that actually operates as a crew as opposed to individual placement. And we use them to do all of our installation. We discovered a while ago that who is going to do the work is a huge question that isn't often answered. And so we answered it with these veterans. I can also say, I've had this point blank said to my face, we have definitely gotten jobs and been allowed to do certain installations that we otherwise would not have been allowed to do because we're working with veterans. There are people who do not want us on their property doing any kind of installation, snooping around, doing anything, but they are more than happy to open their doors to veterans. I would love to talk more about this in depth if anybody wants to reach out to me. I can't say enough good things about this program. Here's just a couple photos. Again, these are all pre-COVID. That's why nobody has masks on. And over on the right there, the beardy guy, that is Taylor. He is our lead. He's actually a district employee. He is a former VCC member, well, he's not a former Marine because you're always a Marine. But he is our crew lead. He's actually district staff. And then behind him, you see a number of our VCC, a number of our crew who come directly from the VCC. They get a very diverse amount of job training. We let them drive the bus a little bit in terms of telling us kind of what they want to learn through this internship, and then we work on making it happen. It's just a phenomenal program. I don't think I can say enough positive things about it. So the major lessons learned is there's a lot of opportunities out there around the Puget Sound region for better GSI. There's more approaches than we ever thought, which is great. We're very happy that people are coming up with their own methods. And one of the big challenges that we were overcoming was coordinating outside of your own district. But cooperation helps. I think there was never a challenge we came up with that wasn't served by us and the partner district sitting down and saying, let's figure out exactly how this is going to work. So we hope to continue on in applying these lessons. We want to keep partnering. We want to put something together that is more long-term. After this grant has expired, we want to make sure that this kind of regional cooperation is something we can move forward with. So now I know who I'm talking to. A number of municipalities want to talk about how kind of you can get involved. And the 2 easiest ways that you can get involved is to contact your local conservation district. I promise you have one. And if you do not feel like you can contact them, or you're not certain who you can contact us. Go at my name and email are at the end. You can go ahead and contact me and just say, who do I talk to? And I will help you find out who you talk to. Oh no, sorry about that. Wouldn't be a webinar if there wasn't a little bit of technical difficulty. So one of the things that conservation districts, our conservation district anyway, has helped with a number of times is NPDES permit requirements. So these are, I'm certain you know what NPDES permit requirements. If you don't, congratulations, probably not something you need to worry about. As far as working with conservation districts on GSI, there's a number of ways with the NPDES that can be helpful. If you're looking at public education outreach, LID principles and BMPs are wonderful, very accessible ways to get the public involved in your outreach and your education. I find that a lot of people can grasp the concept of a rain garden or a bioswale much faster than they can necessarily grasp the function of like a treatment plant. Yard care is another huge one. That is something that conservation districts do very well with. Sustainable yard care and resource conservation. Conservation districts in some places evolved from what were called soil conservation districts or soil conservation agencies. So that is something that we are very aware of and very happy to assist with. Prevention of illicit discharges is something else that we can help with. We're not a regulatory agency, so we can't get anybody in trouble, but we can come up with alternatives and ways to prevent more common types of illicit discharges. And stormwater facility maintenance. If you have a GSI facility, maybe you got a grant a while ago and you're going, gosh, I don't know how to help. I don't know how to maintain this thing. You know, do we weed it? Do we need to do whatever else? Contact us. We're more than happy to help you with that. And again, public involvement and participation. This is, if you're looking to include the public with your planning and implementation of stormwater facilities, I find that the public can grasp the concept of green stormwater infrastructure, rain gardens, bioswales much faster than they can grasp a number of other things related to stormwater. Not that, you know, these things aren't also complicated, and not that anybody in the public is stupid. It's just for somebody who's not educated in that but is a stakeholder, these are significantly easier in my experience. But I do want to note, please check with your permitter. Please do not take my word for it. And if EPA comes knocking on your door, please don't say, oh, but David said. Please check with your permitter before you implement any project, and check with your local conservation district. Education outreach projects, as I mentioned before, webinars, rain barrel sales and classes, build and learn classes, which are when you can actually get the public involved in the installation of GSI, so they can see a little bit more about it, and planting events. I will note that everything on this except for rain barrels is me being very optimistic and hoping that before too long things will open and we will be able to do this again. I do hope that that is the case, fingers crossed, but rain barrel sales and classes, build and learn classes and planting events are wonderful ways to get people who want to get involved and volunteer out and get hands-on and very invested in the process. A great example of capital projects, deep paved right-of-ways and public gardens. These are examples of things that you do not necessarily need public. I mean, you should still get public buy-in, but since they're not residential projects, you don't necessarily need to do the same kind of outreach. If you have an area that you think you can do public way, right of garden, or some kind of bioswale, that is something that is fully within your capability. I've said before that I don't think, you know, GSI takes a little bit of training in terms of the design, but I have never met a landscaping crew or a public works crew that just couldn't do rain gardens as long as they have the appropriate guidance. So yeah, this is something I would strongly recommend reaching out to your local conservation district about, see if they can assist you on. Speaking of which, what is a conservation district? We evolved out of the Civilian Conservation Corps and the Soil and Water Conservation Commission. We are state entities that are also part of, that are usually administered locally, through a federal mandate, we're kind of monstrous chimeras. If you're familiar with the term, we are a special purpose district. So the primary thing that we do is offer free technical assistance to landowners, and work with rural and urban landowners in a number of different ways. This is obviously specific to us and what Snohomish Conservation District does. I strongly recommend reaching out to your local conservation district and getting acquainted with them. We very often work with local jurisdictions. They're some of our greatest partners. They're a really phenomenal way to work together. They can do things that we can't. We can do things that they can't. And it really is kind of a wonderful partnership. One of the easiest ways that you can do this is in outreach and education. Cities have, a lot of ability to interact with people, but sometimes they do not have all of the bandwidth to handle outreach and education, and CDs are often very good at outreach and education. We're very popular, usually because we just kind of get to go do the fun things. So we can help with messaging, and we can help with that aspect. We do a number of different things as well. Obviously, implementation is a big one. So at this point, I will take your questions. My number and email address are up on the screen. I strongly recommend that if you do have any questions, and you are possibly watching the recording of this as opposed to the audience, you reach out to me. I am happy to answer any questions or direct you to resources. Thanks very much.